Alright, ladies and gentlemen, here we are. I think, a full 30 seconds early. Nothing like that. We like to be prompt. Getting into today's two-game slate. The last real week of DFS for you and I, probably for a while. I presume the latter half of May and much of early June, unless they get smarter and start to run some better two-game slates, which they won't. They'll run one game every day for quite a while. I will not be on the air a lot, so let us, you and I, seize this time together as the opportunity to continue to make some ample fundage, shore up those bankrolls, so you can give it all away when NFL comes around. My redoubtable boss, Josh Engelman, informing me that we are indeed all set. I shall be out there looking for the tweet, and we shall retweet said tweet, and hopefully get into making people some more money. The aspect of tonight's slate that reminds me the most recently is Embiid and Yogic versus Horford and Capella. And from the beginning of these series, even before the first game of these series, I looked at these comparisons and went, I don't know where people are seeing this as close. I remember going into the first game of these series happening on the same day, and people saying, it's pretty clear to me that Clint Capella is the center today. And which is something I try not to do, just went, that's wrong. Like, that wasn't even, like, I have Al Horford for this series projected at somewhere in the range of 40 fantasy points a game. I have Clint Capella projected somewhere in the range of 30 fantasy points a game. I don't have it remotely competitive. And in their various matchups, I actually had Nikola Jokic, who is always an excellent fantasy producer and has really taken his game to a preposterous level in the postseason, as a slightly better point-per-minute option than Joel Embiid. And I had him playing an extra 8-9 minutes a game. Now, this last game was only 4 minutes a game. He still got there, even without, 4 overtimes. But strange to me that while a lot of the value has dried up and people have noticed other things, either I'm incredibly wrong, which is probably more likely. When I think of things that I disagree with the public on, it's me versus obviously many people, however you constitute the public. I usually presume they're right and I'm wrong, because I'm one dude, and that's the public zeitgeist made up of whole lots of people with well more collective brain power than I possess, but I still don't get that one remotely. If Cousins was in, there's a whole different thing with Capella, and there's a couple different ways that series can go. But when Cousins went out, it was like, yeah, this series is going to go small. He's going to have trouble being productive and trouble getting minutes. I'll just play Al Horford, who is fine in this matchup too, maybe even a little better than average for him, but has to play infinite minutes. And Capella has played one good quarter this series now, so bully for him. And I like Capella fine as a basketball player, but this not a terribly tough thing for me. And, we've seen Horford. I think Horford has like 50, 30, and 35 through 3 games, so he's around the average I suggested there. But certainly like a dozen more minutes. Like, obviously the price is on DK, now making it not that much of a ridiculous slam dunk. If I'm going to pay down for someone and try to squeeze some extra value out of saving at a center spot or one of my center spots, I'd probably still rather go all the way to Brook Lopez at 4,400 than Clint Capella at 58. But at least, Capella at 58 is a reasonable consideration. I see him in a lineup, I'm like, that's fine. He can bang out 30 minutes. He can get 40 fantasy points in those 30 minutes. He's very Eric Bledsoe in that I worry about the matchup. I worry about how the game goes. I worry about the minute security. I have a lot of concerns, but I can certainly, it's not hard to envision at now what's a reasonable ownership, him having a productive game. So I sort of get it at this point. From the series, there's been all kinds of really bad advice and analysis from DFS people and basketball people on the Bucks Celtics series. Some people are great. Nate Duncan's pods have been excellent. The Ringer pods have been very good. I recommend those. But some of the other ones are I am trying to think of some of the extraordinary comments we have had. There's the link. I will send the link out, and then we can get into this a little further. There is me. Ooh, Look at the hair today. Ruffled, like I just rolled out of bed. Made you some eggs. Yeah. So, yeah, specifically this series. Don't get me wrong, there's been some BS, and again, people misread Capella and Embiid and 16 other should have been fairly obvious things. But this series in particular, whenever I read or hear anything about it, about half the time I'm like, are we watching the same basketball games? Where that's the conclusion he came up with? Today I heard they have merited him for his defense on... Doesn't matter how you end that sentence. That's not an accurate statement. Marcus Morris in there for his guarding of Giannis. That's not remotely... That's like, I'll give you the stat on that one. That's not too hard to look up. But I heard that one today, and no, he's not guarding Giannis much at all, and he's not getting in his foul trouble because of Giannis, and like basically none of that is true. And let's see, Giannis by possession. Marcus Morris has guarded Giannis less than Aaron Baines and less than Semi Ojeleye. 4th overall. Giannis is remarkably overwhelmingly guarded by Al Horford. Al Horford has guarded him 109 possessions. Marcus Morris has guarded him 16. So, no, that has nothing to do with anything. And it is one of those times where people trying to multi-sport, like, I'm sympathetic. One of the reasons I don't do baseball and basketball concurrently, and I did both concurrently a few years ago, and it's a pain in the ass, and after a few weeks I went, yeah, I'm doing this badly. And I'm not comfortable doing it badly when I'm suggesting to other people, here's how you should spend your money. So, yeah, F doing it badly. He might just say his Kevin Durant fantasy point projection. Oh, I guess we have a contest for that or something. Yeah, so, on DraftKings, that ends up being really, really close. Fairly close on FanDuel as well, although obviously we have some positionality plays on FanDuel where some of the greater appeal for Giannis or Durant come from the fact that small forward is barren. Small forward on FanDuel, I believe, is Hayward, Miro, Giannis, Durant. Out, I think is basically it. I think there are 4 small forwards there. So that definitely... muddies the water on DraftKings, where, fairly annoyingly to me, again, there are no positions. I have them very, very slightly ranked. Points per dollar. Before we get into ownership, which I will load up and we'll experience looking at for the first time together. I have them as far as how I am excited for their production versus points per dollar. Durant, just a hair better at 9,200 than Harden, just a hair better at just over $10,000 than Antetokounmpo at about the same price. Again, that's as far as production goes. As far as ownership, we have Giannis the highest at 42% right now, James Harden at 40%, Kevin Durant at 33%. I will start by saying that Durant ownership, I think, will be higher. The others seem about right, but I think this will actually be a tighter race than that portends it to be. I do think that Giannis and Harden will be about identically owned, and they should be, and that makes it a really difficult spot. And my biggest advice there would be I wouldn't bet money on the production of, say, Harden over Giannis. I have him projected for 1.25 fantasy points more. I'm not terribly confident in those projections. You could move those around either way. I see Clint Capella at 49%. I would run screaming from that number. Can he get there? Sure, he can get there. He's not getting there half the time. Horford up to 48%. Okay, good. People figuring out a little bit. But yeah, so my advice there would be, be smart with your correlation plays. If you're playing Curry in a lineup, try not to play Durant. I mean, it depends how many lineups you have. You will have tournament-winning lineups that have Lillard and McCollum, or Durant and Curry, and things that will certainly happen. But in general, it's going to be more worth your time if building a single lineup or 5 lineups to generally stick with, okay, I'm playing Durant, so I'm going to stay off of Curry. I don't have any issue with Durant and Draymond. Draymond at 8,600 on FanDuel, that's about fairly priced. With the extra time he's actually getting at center now, I have his projection for around 43 a game. Like, it's a really good spot for him. 86 on FanDuel at, again, a pretty barren power forward position. That's just fine. That feels fine for me. And DK, he's well underpriced. I like him more than Horford today. And that's saying something, because obviously I've got my conductor's cap on leading the Al Horford train in this series. So let's start and break down and talk about a couple other things. So Marcus Smart will play. I guess we'll start there. That's a good part. I have him projected right now at 18 minutes. Now that will affect to some extent the minutes on some of these other guys. I don't think it should have a substantive effect on Kyrie. I do think of the main pieces of this lineup, the one who takes the largest haircut is Jaylen Brown. I have him losing 4 minutes here, but you're going to lose a couple minutes off Terry Rozier. You're going to get those Semi-Ojeleye minutes paired back to probably, not necessarily, but probably back into the 5, 6, 8 range as opposed to the 11 he got in the last game. This might entirely expurgate, depending on how a couple other things go, Daniel Tice and Aaron Baines from the rotation. But, I have Jaylen Brown's minutes descending back into the 20s. He's still fine to play. It obviously muddies the waters a little bit. But I will say it does end up being, for me, not much of a degradation for Gordon Hayward, Jason Tatum, Marcus Morris, which other people are suggesting, because, yeah, they're losing minutes, but some of those minutes will come from the guys that Brad wasn't super excited to be playing big minutes anyway, and Marcus Smart will make the offense flow a little better when he's out there, and will generally take fewer shots in his time than Jaylen Brown, so it's not great, but I've heard a lot of comments like, oh, Marcus Smart is back, that's great, I can now ignore these wings. That's an overstatement to me. It is a net negative for me, but not a significant. I mean, I would reduce those guys' production by like 2 to 6%, depending on whether or not you're talking about, Jaylen Brown, who might even be, I'd pull 10% off his projection, because there's a chance he goes down to like 25 minutes. The floor definitely, descends a little bit for him. Again, from the beginning of the series before Game 1, I was like, he was my guy in the series. He's the guy I think overproduces versus expectations, alongside Horford. Alright, so let's talk this through a little bit here. Kyrie is still, especially on DK, too cheap. He is not as too cheap as several other guys. You can get some cheaper, and how many minutes do you have projected for Smart? I have 18 right now. I have him, because he's coming off the bench, probably playing 4 stints of 4 to 5 minutes. That's my best guess. That's what I've seen as far as similar situations with players returning for injury, for Brad in the past. That's what it sounds like he's going to do, so I'm thinking you get something like that. I have 18 right now. And again, I have that broken up as coming, I think, 4 off Brown, 6 off Ojeleye, 5 collectively getting pulled from Tyson Baines, who I think leave the court entirely now, and they just shift everything a little bit bigger, and 1 and 2 off Hayward and Morris, or something like that. Which is, again, why people are like, oh, sweet, I can get rid of Gordon Hayward now. And I don't know. It doesn't change that much for me. And again, especially on FanDuel, where there just aren't any goddamn small forwards. Why are you higher on Green versus Horford today? I'm projected to score more fantasy points, and the ownerships are comparable. From the beginning of the series, I had Al Horford at 40.25, I think, at the start of the series, fantasy points per game, which was way higher than I think just about anyone else, and part of that was the reliance on him seeing just massive minutes, and that has all come to pass, and that feels well and good. Draymond at center really kicks up his projection. I have him for 43 today. I just have him scoring more fantasy points, and the ownership has not, I don't think, caught up. Nope, on DK right now we have Draymond at 40 and Horford at 48. I imagine it's a little narrower. I will actually take Draymond playing a little more than that, and I will actually think Horford playing a little less. They're going to be similarly owned. It's going to be give or take, I think, 5% either way. I think they're both in the 40s. I think that's right. And I have Draymond scoring a few more points. So that's why I prefer Draymond. The minutes should absolutely continue to be there for Dre, and him at center is a very real thing, and the smaller they force it, the more likely he gets more rebounds, which leads to him starting more breaks, which leads to him getting more assists, which leads to him getting more triple-doubles. It just... it works out that way. So yeah, I have Horford getting, 40, 41. I have Draymond getting, 43 and a half, I think. So... Thoughts on Clint Capella? I think he's fine to play. His price is now cheap enough where he's, again, I compare him very similarly to Eric Bledsoe. I am really worried about the minutes. I am worried about the rotations taking them away from him. I am worried about him not being the guy who does the most with the ball when he's out there, where Capella is playing fourth fiddle, really, to Paul Harden-Gordon, and Bledsoe is playing, we'll say, third. fiddle to Middleton and Giannis, and both of them are getting threatened by the oncoming of George Hill and the oncoming of PJ Tucker at center minutes and the return of Austin Rivers, which makes that a more viable possibility. So, but the ownership has descended, again, at the beginning of the series where people are like, I like Capella over Horford this series. I thought that was collective insanity. At this point, you're actually saving money over Horford as opposed to when he was higher owned and more expensive, which was, Christmas in May. But, 5,800 now. Sure, roll him out there in a tournament. I'm guessing, I haven't seen that number, but I bet we haven't projected. Jesus, he's 49% projected? Never mind, don't go there. Sorry, I forgot. Yeah, don't go there. We've seen game after game after game how the series is going to go. Is there a chance that he goes off? Sure, but I don't think it's as likely as the chance that he's decent to bad. Yeah, and keep in mind, by the way, Draymond at center. That's a real thing, too. You give me Cousins at center. Capella can make that work from a few different angles. He's got a real speed advantage. The way they run this offense now with him just starting at the dunker's position down on the bottom right of the key plays well for him there because of the way Cousins tends to cheat with his right leg forward and that whole thing. I can see that matchup working out a whole lot better for him. Draymond at the 5, now I need this guy whose minutes have been consistently threatened and has literally played one good quarter out of 12 in the series to go off in maybe worst possible individual matchup. And again, they switched the universe there, so you don't get stuff like when looking at that series. I won't go through it, but you don't get a whole lot of literally the majority defender on more than half of Giannis's possessions in the entire series. I don't think it's more than half. I think it's a little less than half if I went back and added it up. But 110 possessions that Horford has guarded Giannis, I'm sure is greater than any number that anyone in that Houston Golden State series has guarded each other due to all the switching going on. But at 50%, I wouldn't go there with Capella. I would have none. Now, I'm not recommending you have none because it's a 2-game slate. He's cheap, and there's only so many centers. So it's not a bizarre world where you get 30 out of Horford, 22 out of Brook Lopez, and 37 out of Clint Capela, and not having Clint Capela in anything means you're dead for the whole slate. That would not shock me at all. Again, the way I would like to play it would just to be like, that's a popular guy I can really see failing. I'm just not going to play any. So that's what I would do. I hope I'm explaining that well. I think I've said that like 7 times in the postseason. It's been brilliant 6 times and screwed you all right in the face on Joel Embiid's weird day against the Nets. But yeah, if you have questions, continue. If you are on the Twitter sphere, if you are watching the show on the YouTube, go ahead and send me the message or the direct message or the tweet. If you're on the premium Slack, your questions will get priority. So let me look more at this series. So, right, so Bledsoe, again, had a decent game in Game 2, but, that's like one out of the last, I don't even know. Like, he's been bad against the Celtics. He's been legitimately bad against him. They do a very good job against him. Beyond that, like, this is, to me, still, and we're literally talking about over the last couple of years, going back to, him in Phoenix, right? He's been just goddamn bad in this matchup, and you wouldn't think he would, but this regular season, last playoffs, this we got, like, my boys had, he's been bad here for a while. I guess my point being, I'm not shocked. It is a particularly bad matchup. This is a Bucks defense that does align more to Chris Middleton being the guy. At this point, I still, and I said this before the last game, even at these discounted prices, it's getting close on DK. I still have Middleton for more points per dollar than Eric Bledsoe. And again, going into the last series, I had Bledsoe at 4.5 more fantasy points a game per Middleton. In this series, I have Middleton at 5 more. It's literally a 10-point swing between those two guys, series to series, which is, again, one of the reasons that playoff basketball can be profitable, because people just, run projections, and projections tend not to count for those things quite enough, and you get disparities like Horford, Capella, and Jokic, Embiid, and Bledsoe and Middleton, where shit really changes up series to series, and we're seeing it again and again and again and again. But I guess my point being, it's a 2-game slate. Eric Bledsoe is going to fail here some 70% of the time. He's going to not disappoint you and get you 25 to 32, 20% of the time. And 10% of the time, he's going to go out there and actually make some baskets. Like, through the first quarter last game, he had 10 goddamn shots. I think he made 2 of them. But at the end of the game, I still think he may have led the team in shots, because he just went out gunning last game. If that happens again and he makes half of those baskets, maybe he plays 32 minutes instead of 26-27. At their prices on DK, I actually don't mind Bledsoe next to George Hill. George Hill frequently replaces Bledsoe, but every single game in this series, they have accrued more than 50 minutes collectively. They play next to each other some to a reasonable bit, and if Hill is playing well, they will play him next to Hill at the expense of Connaughton, Ersan even. There's a lot of guys on this team who, can and do play multiple positions. You see Middleton at the 2, the 3, and the 4. You see George Hill at the 1 and the 2. You see Giannis at the 4 and the 5. You see Ersan at the 4 and the 5. You see Mirotic at the 4 and the 5. So the whole I can't have them both out there doesn't really apply here. They will shift people down. Alright, so let's talk more about the Bucks. So, I'm fine with Bledsoe. I can't give you a strong recommendation. We can talk about it site by site later if people have individual questions. Middleton is just great. The price, has always sort of, he's not mega upside guy. This is not a good matchup, I should say, again, for anyone on the Bucks. I would, at their prices, generally rather play Celtics today, but with the return of Marcus Smart, that gets a little muddy. The first thing, we should look at here is that the minutes have really started to solidify for a lot of the teams playing today, and haven't really done so for a number of members of the Bucks. That last game was close. The Bucks took it down by 7. And by the way, I had a lot of guff at the beginning of the series with me picking Toronto to win convincingly and Milwaukee to win convincingly. There's a lot of shit flying my way after a couple games. It has come down a little bit, so we will see how those series finish out. But the whole people screaming at me the 76ers were going to win in 5, that didn't happen. But yeah, if you look at this last game, you had Giannis and Middleton playing 39 minutes. And then you had no one else playing 30. And it's really important to understand that. You had Mirotic, Bledsoe, Lopez, George Hill, and Pat Connaughton all playing between 27 and 29 minutes. So, I don't know how much this continues. When you talk about Hill and Connaughton, Connaughton got 9 3-pointers up in that game, which is 3 more than Chris Middleton, even though he played 28 minutes and Chris Middleton played 39 minutes. Now that is to some degree due to the the defensive attention paid to Chris Middleton versus Pat Connaughton. Like, they're going to let Pat Connaughton shoot, and he didn't, kill them. He made 4 of 9 from 3, 5 from 11 from the field, gave you 30 fantasy points, got 7 rebounds, got 2 steals and a block. And it was good for 31 fantasy points. With the price coming up, let me see what our ownership is on Connaughton, but I'm not super excited to go back to the Connaughton or George Hill wells. We have Connaughton at 30%. We have George Hill at 18%. I actually have them projected pretty damn close to each other. I think I have Connaughton for 1 more fantasy point. He costs $200 less, but with that ownership, I'm probably a little more excited going to Hill. Those numbers are boosted by the fact that, again, Connaughton can play 6 positions in your lineup or whatever the hell it works out to be, because, again, there are no positions, which is odd for basketball, but talking this out a little more. So, yes, I would probably rather play Hill than Connaughton. I do think that ownership is about right. I do think more people will play Connaughton. I've been screaming him to play more Hill and less Connaughton this entire series, and he went out and had a very good game. I guess. I mean, his defense looked better. He had gotten roasted a little bit, and to further argue against myself here, George Hill's defense on Kyrie Irving has been bad. Like, people are out among the 37 things I saw written wrong about this series today. Another one was they keep bringing George Hill out there because Kyrie Irving is roasting Eric Bledsoe. No. That's not happening. I guess I'm going to look this one up, but we'll do this together. Maybe I'm wrong, but eye test, that has not been the case. Kyrie Irving, playoff, total, matchups, defense, team, Milwaukee. Yeah, no. Okay, good. It's nothing makes me feel better because I don't actually get to play. than watching something, hearing something, being like, that has to be wrong, and then looking up the data and having it match up. Here we go. The person who has guarded Kyrie Irving the most in the series is George Hill, significantly. 96 possessions for George Hill as primary defender, 64 for Eric Bledsoe. So exactly 50% more. How about that? And then third place is Chris Middleton. So these two guys are with 21. So these two guys are really doing the job. Collectively, they have him for 70-something percentage of the time. In the matchups where Eric Bledsoe was his primary defender, Kyrie Irving is shooting 5 for 17 and 1 for 7 for 3. That's not good. That's, 30% from the field and 14% from 3. That's not good. In the 96 matchup, so 50% more, that he was guarded by George Hill, Kyrie Irving is shooting 13 for 25 from the field and 4 for 8 from 3. That's very good. That's Hall of Fame shit. So yeah, and again, I'm a George Hill stan. I've said they should have him out there more than Pat Connaughton because he's a better defender, blah, 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 blah. Kyrie is feeding him his ass. So, do with that information what you will. I don't think you're going to do any better putting, but that's one of those things that gives you a little more help with Bledsoe and gives me a little more concern. So it's really tough for me to come in here and make a strong Bledsoe, Connaughton, Hill recommendation on DK, where all those prices obviously give you a real chance at hitting an upside, because I can see it going a lot of ways. But again, more really shitty misinformation today is like, Bledsoe's getting wrecked, and so they're having to bring in George Hill. No, it's the absolute other way around, which is just one more thing that makes the situation really goddamn weird. So I'll just move on. You can obviously play Giannis and everything. He was a monster in that last game. He changed up a couple things. We're running out of time, so I won't go too deep into it, but attacked at better angles. More spins than just trying to Euro is generally a better move for him, and less just crashing into the wall they set up for him. It'll be interesting to see how that reverses, but looked better in that last game, and I do think that improvement is realistic. He's young, but he's smart, and if you keep giving him, and again, he's been defended by Al Horford 110 possessions, he's gonna figure out how to get around him. At some point, he's gonna get at least better at it. So, I do think that improvement is real. At the start of the series, I had Harden projected for about 5 more points than him. Today, that number, again, is down to about 1. Now, part of that is the improved, him learning to deal with Al a little bit better. And part of that is also the minutes, again. We mentioned he got up to 39, and that was something, again, I said that we expected as the series went on. In case of emergency, break glass and get more Giannis. Now, that last game, 2 steals, 3 blocks, that was excellent. But obviously, just a fine game on it. But only took 13 shots. There is still ginormoid Giannis Antetokounmpo ceiling here. I slightly prefer Harden because I generally know he's going to go out there and really try to put his thing down. And one of these days, he's going to shoot halfway decent. That last game, still, I don't know. I'm top of my heading it. He shot 40% from the field, one of his last 9 games. His shooting has been horrible. But he took 32 shots in that last game, and that's carrying a decent floor, and he had, 60 on FanDuel and 65 on DK. He's going to have a good shooting night one of these days and make half his shots? It's not a great matchup, don't get me wrong. Clay does a brilliant job at him. Again, I watched that series, and I'm just drooling over PJ Tucker and Clay when the other team is on offense. I'm just watching those guys and loving everything they do. I know that's old man take, but love me some good defense. Alright, so let's finish this team. Mirotic is fine. I think it's likely he plays 30 minutes again. DK at 4,200, we have him projected to be the chalk of chalk at 61%. I would come in under that number. I'm absolutely fine with him. There's no issue with that points per dollar, but I would much rather play PJ Tucker if I can come up with the 300 extra dollars. I have them projected almost identically, and that's largely because I have PJ Tucker playing 10 more minutes, or 11 more minutes. And again, that's really something we need to keep in mind when talking about these teams. Again, 2 players on this team, the Bucks, played significant minutes last game, as in they each played 39. The Warriors, for example, again, there was an overtime here, but shelling 5 minutes off these guys, the starters were going to play 44, 41, 40, 40, 35, 36 for Andre Iguodala, and I imagine you see something like that again, because shit is getting real in that series, and that extra time really matters. And Eric Gordon was going to play 40 minutes again, so Yeah, if he's going to be half owned and he's going to play 10, 12 more minutes, I will take PJ Tucker over Mirotic. There's nothing wrong with saving $300. There's nothing wrong with playing Mirotic. He's a point per minute guy. It's not a great spot for him, but generally in this spot he's going to give you 30 fantasy points in 30 minutes, and that's going to feel pretty good for $4,200. So, yes, generally I would try to go with someone less chalky because I imagine either, I don't know, Ersan or Pat or Tucker or just one of these guys manages to get there, and I think the math long term will work out better for your profitability if you go other places than if you suck up the 62% Mirotic. And a one-game sample will never tell us that. Talking about the Celtics a little more, yeah, I'm fine with Kyrie absolutely anywhere. He also shot bad. I want to say 8 for 22 or 9 for 22 in that last game. Really haven't caught the super series out of him, but 8,200 on DK is too cheap. It is difficult for me tinkering with lineups all day to get there because he's just coming in a little under the I've got to play Kevin Durant, I've got to play either Harden or Giannis, I want to play Al Horford, I want to play Draymond Green, and he gets fixed out a lot. But I'm unhappy about it. I don't think Smart costs him any time, maybe a minute. So the backcourt is a little deeper. But yeah, not happy with the amount of Kyrie I think I would end up having. I've been a Jaylen Brown stan this entire series. I am worried now that you randomly get 26 minutes or something. That's going to make it tough for him to get there. His price has come up because he has been good. I'm concerned, obviously still in playing tournaments. We finally got the good game out of Jason Tatum. I do think his minutes are, again, similar to Kyrie's, largely, if not entirely, safe from the impact of Marcus Smart. So I'm fine going back there. Again, it's a 2-game slate. I don't look at his price at $7K on FanDuel and $6K on DK and get chills up and down my spine, but it's obviously doable. Basically the same situation with Marcus Morris. I do think he loses a couple of minutes because of how that bench rotation will go now. But again, 59 and 51 I think are his numbers. Obviously I love Al Horford. I think Al Horford is the best center play on FanDuel by, I don't think I can stretch my arms big enough. But curious how we have him projected. I have to imagine he's the most owned player on the slate. Nope, we have Mirotic higher, which is fair. But the centers on FanDuel are like Horford, Capella? It's Horford, Capella, Brook Lopez, and Jesus, you don't even have anyone on the Warriors, really. Obviously, you can throw it away. And certainly there's an argument for build. Like, if I was building a pile of lineups, I would build the, if Horford's going to be 65% owned, certainly not etched in stone that he's going to get there, so I'd run the punt. Let's see, Looney's a power forward. Bell's a power forward. It's going to be a pretty weird world in this series if Bogut gets significant time. Really don't know who the punt center is I'd throw out there. Nene? Nene's the center, I think. The Nene lineup or something. Because you have the outs of just Horford being bad. And you just spend up other places. Because obviously we're having trouble getting enough money to play, say, Giannis, Durant, and Harden. If you want to do that lineup, that's the first one in which I wouldn't have Horford at center. But on FanDuel, where you have to spend up an additional $600, I think it is, for Clint Capella. Yet that's not close by any real points per dollar standard. Again, I have Al Horford for 10 more fantasy points than Clint Capella. When Clint Capella is more expensive, that's not going to work out for you terribly well. Hayward, I expect to get shaved a couple minutes here. Fine, obviously. On FanDuel, I would prefer him at 5,400 because, again, there are 4 small forwards. I don't mind Marcus Smart on FanDuel. He is the minimum. There's a chance he gets 25 minutes and gets 5 shifts instead of the 4, I suspect. And with, steals being 3 fantasy points there, he's going to be chalky. He probably should be chalky, but minimum price, even for 18, 20 minutes, is probably too little for him. So I do like Smart there. You can run Rozier again. Again, you really need something weird to happen, especially with Smart back to Kyrie, for that to work out. But massive blowout, and he plays low fourth quarter and scores 18 in that quarter for a total of 27. No issue with you running Rozier, but again, would prefer it pretty significantly on FanDuel. On DK, I would rather run Connaughton, Hill, Tucker, Miro, etc. Let's go on to the next game. We spent a little too long on this one in 6:35. So let's talk more, and then I will bang into some questions. So yeah, Steph Curry. Doesn't look right, hasn't shot well, and Durant is in his ideal form. You save $1,500 on DraftKings and 21, I think it is, on FanDuel. And, on FanDuel, in a way you want to play Durant, in a way, he's going to be chalkier and there's more options. I don't know. It's, I prefer playing Kevin Durant because, again, I need Curry to, really, really step up his game. Now, obviously, he's a guy who has 60, 70 fantasy point upside. But it's, he has a bad right ankle, a bad finger on his left hand. They're only one day off, I think. I believe they played the day before yesterday, whereas the Celtics and Bucks are on 2 days off. So I just don't think he's on. I'm trying to fashion a take here other than to simply say, you can play Steph. He could go out and throw up 50 or 60 because he's still Steph Curry, but he's been shit for a week, and I don't know. I'm trying to think of something more interesting to say than that. I do think in one or some small number of lineups, I'm trying to avoid playing him next to Kevin Durant. I'm slightly more comfortable with Durant and Draymond than Steph and Draymond, but I'm still pretty comfortable with Steph and Draymond on DraftKings at least, where, again, they collectively cost you, whatever, 14.5. Again, these guys played a metric butt ton of minutes. I have really no interest in anyone on the bench here. Unless you are building some very weird stack the shit out of the first game and think this game goes into a massive blowout, I'm going to play Kevon Looney shit, which, that's fine. That's a viable lineup structure. Really not interested in the bench here. Again, they really laid on the starters here. I'm not really interested in Andre Iguodala. He's obviously a little more appealing on DK at $4,900, but I'm of two minds here. Let us say... first of all, the minutes are obviously really encouraging. He would have played about 36 minutes in regulation. Now, to a certain extent, the steals and blocks have been a little more than I would expect. Let me make sure I'm not talking it over. Yeah, last game, 4 stocks. He had 3 blocks and a steal. And his shooting in the last 4 games is, I'm not kidding, 7 for 11, 6 for 7, 6 for 9, 6 for 9. So he's shooting north of 70% from the field over the last few games. I don't mind him. Again, it's similar to a Clint Capella situation for me where, all right, the price has now come up so much that on FanDuel he's $6,000. All right. DK, he's $4,900. That's fine. I'm projected for about 29 fantasy points in 35 minutes. And that feels fine. Cash, no issue with you rolling out some Iguodala. Tournaments, if you end up with them, cool. Again, it's a 2-game slate. And he's priced very nicely. I would rather play PJ Tucker. I would rather play yada, yada, yada. But, there's a real chance that he has a 2 for 7 shooting day and only gets a steal and ends up with 18 fantasy points. He has been overperforming, is my point. He's good. I like him. I do think the minutes are for real. I think they, protect him all season. Again, this is, finals MVP Andre Iguodala with this team. I imagine his playing time stays about where it is, but I'm disinclined to have a massive amount because I do not think he will consistently, give you 35 fantasy points a game. I think that is north of a projection. $9,200 Kevin Durant on DK for me is probably still my favorite play on the slate. He's just not quite owned enough for a guy who I project still into the 50s, who's been brilliant for about 8 games in a row, and I really have no reason to expect that to change. He has the best matchups on the team. I like him only slightly more than Draymond, who, again, I just really, when you get in there and he's going to play 40 minutes and 20 of them are at center, just everything flows better for him that way. You just get more rebounds, more assists, more, it just really flows nicely that way. Clay is fine. He's going to be sort of the forgotten man. If you land on Clay, it's great. Again, the minutes are secure. All these dudes are playing 40 minutes. It's one of the big reasons I like, PJ Tucker. All these guys, cost $7,000, $8,000, $9,000, $10,000. They're going to play 40 minutes. PJ Tucker costs $4.5 and he's going to play 40 minutes. That's pretty appealing for me because, again, the ball just sometimes bounces into your goddamn hands. Let's look at the Rockets. Unlike the Warriors, I actually kind of like Austin Rivers off the bench. Played 28 minutes in the last game. That was somewhat of an artifact of overtime. I still have him playing 23 or 24 minutes. They generally are going to play him more than Shumpert for $400 more on FanDuel and $5 on DK. I would still rather play Austin Rivers than Shump. He's not generally going to get those threes. He's frequently not going to make those threes. Austin Rivers is a real part of this team. His absence was very relevant earlier in these playoffs. And, I legit like Austin Rivers still at what I expect him to be on. There's obviously a very low floor there, but $3,400 on DK may be the most playable guy at that price or under. Him or Ersan would be your choices. And Ersan, there's a real chance of 12 minutes there. Austin Rivers is going to play 22, 24 minutes. Capella, we've talked about extensively. He's obviously just fine in tournaments. I would rather play all Horford in most circumstances, but at least on DK you're saving some money. PJ Tucker is probably going to would be in a lot of my lineups on FanDuel, a power forward. Tatum's up to 7K. Morris is 59, I think it is. The position is pretty thin, and spending 58 on PJ Tucker doesn't feel like the best thing ever. 40 minutes, bro. Let's, give him... he's, not a great fantasy producer. I think on the year I don't think he got to 0.7 fantasy points a minute. So let's give him 0.6. That's still like 25. 24, 25 out of PJ Tucker at 5,800 on FanDuel might still be the right play, because none of the punts really look that great. Eric Gordon, obviously better on FanDuel than DK. DK at 5,600, I would rather go with another long shots with him coming off a big game. He has been key in this series. I don't think he continues to get around 20 shots. I do think CP3 steps it up a little bit, though I do think the denouement in his fantasy production is for real. Worried about that contract in a year or two, seeing how that works out. But don't get me wrong, still love Chris Paul on my team. But I do think you will see more of Eric Gordon out there shooting. FanDuel, pretty big fan. DK, obviously fine. But I suspect the ownership would be higher than I would be comfortable with. But let's see. Let's refresh just to make sure I didn't miss an update. And we're going to bang into some questions because I feel like we talked about almost everyone. Eric. Oh, we have Bledsoe higher than Gordon. That's interesting. I mean, Bledsoe at 37. Gordon at 21. I wouldn't mind him on DK at 21. That's a little lower than I think he should be. Hill at 21. Tucker at 20 is crazy for me. It's really nuts. Like, I haven't projected for about 30 fantasy points. That's a good deal. And by the way, I didn't specifically make this point, but if it isn't obvious, Tucker is getting a lot of time at the 5 too, and that's better for everyone. You just get more rebounds. It's much more betterer for Draymond than it is for Tucker. Simply because Draymond then initiates the offense and just has a lot more to do with it, just his hands on the ball more. Tucker rebounds it and then hands it to someone. So, still better for Tucker. The rebounds are going to come up. And we've seen him get, 30 fantasy points a couple times in a row here. Let's look at some questions, and y'all can let me know shit I have forgotten. Fast 80 Fear, you don't recommend Bledsoe. Osmo ranked him A for value. It's confusing. I don't do a value ranking per se. Would be one of the differences. Value, I presume, is simply some sort of amortization of cost versus expected production. I have basically how much I like them in cash and how much I like them in GPPs. I would have trouble giving him a strong ranking in cash because the minutes have been sketchy. Has not played 30 minutes yet in this series. And it's a matchup in which he's shown a real floor where I can't guarantee he gets you 20 for $5,500. There are better cash options. So I have trouble giving him an A there. I gave him an A in tournaments because there is a chance he smashes the shit out of his price at $5,500. So that's when you say you don't recommend Bledsoe. Every show I talk about 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 guys. I tend to recommend about 3 or 4, and the rest I just talk about and hope it helps you inform your own decisions. So I wouldn't say I wouldn't say don't play Eric Bledsoe. I haven't said anything like that. I don't strongly recommend him because A, he's going to be pretty popular, and B, there's a real chance he fails, and that's obviously something I have concern with. But hope that informs your question. As far as an A for value, I suspect if I ranked for value, he would be a B for me. But I still have him projected for, I think, 28 fantasy points at $5,500. That's pretty good value. That's 5 points per dollar. Looking at it as simply. What do you think about punting dropping center on FanDuel with Nene? I think it's fine because there's a real chance the other centers are balls. It's basically an anti-Horford play. I would make sure I have Kyrie in that lineup. If you already have Gordon, Rivers, and Tucker, would you take Giannis over Harden? Yes. That would certainly be enough to tilt that for me. You have more Harden than Giannis. Good to know. Better option on DK to save money. Connaughton or Mirotic? I like Mirotic more as a raw points play by about 4. I am pretty significantly higher. But the ownership is really disparate. So that's really just going to be depending on what you're trying to do. Same team, that's a tough choice. Merit is projected for 91% ownership on FanDuel. How would you play that? I would try to avoid it then. At that point, I'm just going to be like, sweet, I want everyone to have to drop Miro there. Which, again, as we discussed extensively before their last game, isn't the end of the world. Dropping, at that point, $4,400 and at this point, $4,700 Meritage is just fine. You're not trying to do it. But at that point, I would definitely get in under 91% and try to play lots of, like, you'll get a very unique lineup at that point playing Giannis and Durant. And there's no reason you can't get 70 out of Giannis and 70 out of Durant here. And if you're telling me that lineup is going to be 3% owned, I'd be pretty excited about doing that. So I would target getting away from it intentionally quite a bit more. I don't know. Thoughts on Miro is the most owned on DK? Yeah, I'm not surprised. I would come in under that. Again, I don't think he's that much better than Hill, Connaughton, Tucker, etc. And I'm not super secure in the minutes. I'm pretty secure. It seems like they want to give him 25 to 30 minutes. It seems like that is a goal. But it's not hard for me to imagine a scenario in which Bledsoe plays really well, which obviously can't happen, happened game 2, and they need to give someone the haircut, and George Hill is playing well, and so Connaughton plays 20 minutes and scores 17 fantasy points. Like that would not shock me, so it's tough. Would you Patsy and Hill in the same lineup on DK? Yeah, I'm fine with that. I would not Mirotic in that lineup if I could avoid it, but yes, I'm fine with that. Thoughts on the impact of Durant and Curry? Steve Kerr said he expects Curry to be really aggressive from the get-go today. He's been plenty aggressive. He's not making his shots. I mean, he's got a bad finger on his guide hand. He's got a bad ankle on the opposite leg, and his defensive assignment is tougher on him than Durant. So he's still, for me, an absolutely just fine tournament play. But yeah, where they are on the road, the whole thing, I'm not super into it still. Like, it is an issue of facility. He's not 100%. Maybe he is today. Another 48 hours. Do you see more Shumpert again? Yeah, it was annoying that they announced Daniel House was out after the last game started. I had someone who had the perfect DK lineup with House as a punt, a buddy of mine, and then House didn't play. And if he'd known that, he would have run, I'm sure, Shumpert or Green or someone who did play. So I imagine that was pretty frustrating for him. But I don't know if they reinsert him in the lineup. I haven't seen any news. I would, again, rather play Austin Rivers than Shumpert if you have the few hundred extra dollars. Curry and Jerebko or CP3 and Ersan. This lineup has Smart, who isn't that safe in my opinion. I can't play Jerebko. I don't think he plays anymore. He's gotten minor cameos each of the last 2 games and played really, really badly. Game 2 played 9 minutes. Game 3 played 4 minutes, I think. I don't think he plays. I really don't want to play Jerebko. So for that reason, I would play CP3 and Ersan because they can both get there. But obviously I prefer Curry to CP3, so not thrilled with either of those pairings. Yahoo Cash, Irving, Morris, and Tucker, or Hill, Middleton, and Draymond. I would play Hill, Middleton, and Draymond in cash. Rozier, Rivers, and Draymond, or Bledsoe, Gordon, and Morris. It says FanDuel GPP in your name, which is pretty cute. I would play Rozier, Rivers, and Draymond. If you're making one lineup on DK, would you play KD and Green in the same lineup? Yes, and as a matter of fact, let me see. Where's the... Yes, the DK lineup that I built. I build one cash and one GPP lineup for FanDuel and DraftKings every day. The GPP lineup and the cash lineup on DraftKings both have Draymond and Kevin Durant in them. Marmo, that's got to be Marcus Morris. Iggy Gohei as the last utility on DK with 5.1 less. It would be Iggy or Gordon Hayward for me, pretty clearly. It's going to depend on how many other Warriors you have. If you have, like, Durant and Draymond already, probably pushes me onto Gordon Hayward for the ownership and the production distribution. But one of those two. If you're pallying Harden, Durant, and Green, do you try to all-out stack that game or go where other pieces fit? Generally, I'll go where other pieces fit, but only slightly. Stacking that game is difficult because of the salaries on some guys. And Harden takes up so much usage. Like, I want to get Tucker in there. So, but I think, again, like a lot of lineups I built have Harden, Tucker, Durant, and Green. Past that, you can certainly throw in Curry and Capella or CP3 and whatever, but I don't think that's a must, and there's slightly better place by dipping into the other game. Brook or Miro? One lineup at this point, I would probably play Brook Lopez. Got up to 29 minutes in the last game, wasn't great. It's a bad matchup for him. I have him projected for 19 fantasy points. It's not exciting, but he's going to be 14% owned or whatever, and Mirich is going to be 60-something. That's enough for me to tilt it there. Smart or Rivers on FanDuel? If you have the extra 400, I think it is, Austin Rivers. Boom, 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 boom. Having Irving, Iggy, or Klay Thompson and CP3 FanDuel GPP. It points out almost exactly the same. I would probably Irving, Iggy, but I don't have a strong take there for you. With Smart back, is Jason Tatum at 6K still a viable GPP play? Absolutely. It should not affect him significantly. Again, Brown, most, Ojale, second, Rozier, third, and then you're looking at a minute from Morris, Hayward, Irving, before I think it even gets to Tatum. Tatum is on the more secure side there. Not playing Harden, by the way. Okay, so, in that point, yeah, that would push me on to Klay Thompson and CP3. CP3 goes from being a meh play when you have Harden in there to being pretty exciting for me when you don't have Harden in there. The frequency of it happening may be down now to 15% from 25%, but you just get games where they both get 50. It happens, every 4th to 7th game or what have you, and it's a good time to be on the CP3 there. Iggy or Morris on DK and a GPP? I would probably slightly rather play Iggy, but I have Iggy projected give you 28, 29 fantasy points. I have Morris for 25, 26. It's going to depend on game stacking and other stuff and how many other Celtics you have and but I'd slightly prefer to play Iguodala in that case. Almost caught up on the questions. Answered that one. Mac Applecheck. Hey, any way I can make this unique with a wow factor? I'm going to look at your lineup here. I don't know if you're watching the show even. I won't read out your lineup. If you are watching the show, young lady, I'm fine with this. I think you're pretty unique here. I mean, you've got Chris Paul. I don't mind revealing one piece of your lineup. So you've already got Paul, no Harden. And the rest of your stuff is pretty solid, and I think that's a fine lineup. On a 2-game slate, trying to get super sexy and off the board is I think more often a recipe for trouble. Then obviously there will be some days that you correctly get the 2% owned guy. Going into the Twitter sphere, 27, okay, messages, many messages. How is Green a better play for Horford for just 1.5 for cost smart? I think I talked about that a lot. The answer is the combination of ownership and more gross points. I know it ends up being a little confusing, but the ownership is really the answer to that question. Thoughts on Klay and Tatum? It's going to depend what else you're doing with your lineup. If for some reason you have no Durant, no Curry, then I'm going to play Klay in that spot over Tatum. If you have, say, Kyrie and Durant, that ends up being very, very close for me. Play Eric Gordon and leave $900 on the table, or spend an extra few hundred to get Iggy on FanDuel and a GPP. At that point, I would probably play Iggy. I think he ends up being a little lower owned there. Thoughts on Eric Gordon? I think he's fine. Much better on FanDuel, where he's legitimately priced appropriately. Clearly, we've seen the ceiling is there. Not a guy who picks up a ton of peripherals, so needs to take a lot of shots. Took 20 last game. Make a lot of shots. Made 11 of them. But are you an idiot for having no Giannis or Harden in one lineup on DraftKings? No, not whatsoever. They both had one really poor game in the series, right? I have Giannis, projected for 53, 54 a game this series, which is down again 7 from last series. And he basically has that in 3 games. He hit it once, went 15 over and 15 under, and Harden has a 43, a 55, and a 65 in 3 games. So in a 3-game sample size, we've seen a under 40 out of Giannis and an under 45 out of Harden. So no. Now, if you're playing that, I really want to play. If you're playing no Harden or Giannis, I think I'm starting with trying to play Bledsoe, Middleton, Chris Paul, and then filling out the rest of that lineup. But that's where I'm starting that lineup. But no, there's certainly no requirement. They're in different games, so one of them doing shitty has nothing to do with the other one doing shitty, and they can both fail. Eric Gordon and Mirotic, or CP3 and Ersan in DK in a GPP. I can do CP3 and Ersan if you don't have James Harden. If you have Harden, by any reasonable raw point sensibility, that is going to be Gordon and Mirotic for me. Let's continue to look at things. About 5 minutes to go. A lot of people were confused by my projection for Draymond Green over Horford, and again, I like Horford apparently more than most people. It also has something to do with your chance of hitting some sort of supernumerary upside. Like the 50 you got out of Al Horford in Game 1 is about the best you're gonna do. You can get 55. Obviously, 1 in 100 games, you can get 65 out of Al Horford. That is in the range of possibilities, but, Draymond has a much better chance of getting you 65. So that has something to do with it, but I would slightly prefer to play Draymond Green to Al Horford, but I like them both quite a bit. Is Rozier unplayable on FanDuel? No, not whatsoever. You can play him next to Kyrie. Like, he's at 4,300, he's your best point guard, I think. George Hill's 49 on FanDuel. If you had the 600, I would slightly prefer Hill. If you don't have the 600, you can run him out there as a drop. Rozier, Rivers, Dre, Bledsoe, Gordon, Morris. Sorry if you answered that already. It, again, has a lot to do with whomever else is in your lineup. I would prefer Rozier, Rivers, Dre. Thoughts on Rivers and Smart at shooting guard on FanDuel? I'm fine with it. It's sort of a stacked position today, but I'm fine with both those plays. Ersan or Shump, DK single entry GPP cannot get to Rivers. With slightly prefer Ersan in that situation. DK, GPP, Harden and Middleton, or CP3 and Giannis. I will very slightly prefer Harden and Middleton. Pat Connaughton or Austin Rivers? Yeah, I have Pat Connaughton projected for significantly more. Like, I have him projected for 4 or 5 more fantasy points. Basically, I have Austin Rivers, I think a little bit under 20, and I have Connaughton actually close to 24. So, any raw point sensibility, that is still Pat Connaughton, but there is going to be an ownership disparity, and you are saving a few $100s. Are you fine with not running CP3 at all on DK? Yeah, that's you're fading the 10-20% of the time he gets 50, in which case, yeah, that'll suck for you. But the most likely occurrence for him is I had him projected to get 37 fantasy points a game in this series. I think he's somewhere around there. That's about what you should expect. Ersan or Hill on DK? Hill in general. Tatum and Miro. I mean, that's pretty close for me, but just most likely I still think you're getting 27, 28 minutes of George Hill, and I think you're getting 13 minets of Ersan, and I just can't get past that mostly. Tatum and Mirotic, or Horford and Pat Connaughton on DK, no other Celtics. Yeah, I'll play Horford and Pat C in that case. Bledsoe or Capella on DK? I generally would be more excited to play Bledsoe. You went Tatum as an ownership play? That's fine. Alright, let's get in here. We got 2 minutes or so. I'm going into making sure I haven't missed anything else. Would you prefer Iggy and Capella or Haywood and Clay on DK? Haywood, I assume is Hayward. Although if Haywood's back playing, that guy played some good D. I will go with Gordo and Clay in that situation. Let's make sure I'm not missing anything. Bring that over there. The Bucks are who we thought they were. Nothing there. No news there. 1 minute and 45 seconds until lock. And then we'll play our favorite little ownership game. It really isn't a game anymore. It's me reading out ownerships. It's fun when it's a game. I enjoy when it is competitively structured. But either way. Walkie. 1 minute. 1 minuto, señoras y señoras. No, I think that's a very good question. When done respectfully, I'm happy to be grilled. I'm perfectly happy if I say something and you don't get it and you ask and I answer your question and you don't think I answer your question satisfactorily, ask again. The worst thing that happens is I don't see it or don't answer it, or like if you don't mind the potentiality of losing 4 seconds of your time, I encourage you to harass the shit out of me, as long as it's, done respectfully. If you're cursing me out and shit, yeah, generally I really won't appreciate that, but, have a good time. And again, that is the exception. But no, I don't have an issue with you saying I still don't understand why this guy or this guy. There's only so much time I can devote to a question, but, do your thing, baby. We're coming down to it. A couple seconds left. Yeah. No, it's a weird, and then, no, I get that. I'm not. You never want to take a shot at it. Like I have I frequently get conflicted because I feel like I have a responsibility. First and foremost, I'll be honest. I consider my responsibility as follows. Number one, to everyone watching the show, most specifically the subscribers, to be honest and transparent. That's number one. Number two, to the company. Awesemo.com pays me. I should represent them honestly, but as well as possible, because I'm providing a service for them for which I am well compensated. And then number three would be discussing the industry and talking about other touts and stuff. And so there's a conflict between number one and number three, where I see a lot of people slacking it, where this is clearly people who have spent 4 hours today working on baseball and 12 minutes looking at basketball and just aren't following the playoffs and aren't watching it and are writing shit that is digested by many, many thousands of people, which says, like, yeah, Mirotic is out there for his defense and Marcus Morris is guarding Giannis and all this shit is happening. That just isn't happening, so it always puts me on the horns of a decision. I may never have called out someone in 4 years of doing this where I've said, like, this guy said this dumb thing, but I will frequently say, like, yeah, this dumb thing has been out there a lot today and it's dumb. So I don't know. There's no right answer there. But if I landed on the sign that you were not comfortable with today, I apologize for that. I got nothing. Alright, let's look at some contests. DraftKings is up, so we'll look there first. There's a 200K. Oh no, that's like $180 center. There's a 500K. Alright, let's look at this bad boy. $500,000. Alright, here we go. Yeah. Do I have a responsibility to myself? Of course. Alright, let's not get too dramatic here. This is not Boiler Room Glengarry Genross. No one is. I don't get called in the office and beaten with a whip if I don't speak in a particular way. But I do try to, I try to be responsible about civics and politics so that when I talk about them, I don't feel hypocritical. And I try to be responsible and ethical when it comes to the DFS space so that I have the right to talk about it. You don't want to vote? That's great, but don't bitch when you don't like the way the government's going. All right, here we go. Ownership on DraftKings in the $500,000 main event. Number one, Nikola Mirotic, 47%, which makes all this very interesting. Nikola Mirotic, 47. Pat Connaughton, 44. I would at that point pretty convincingly come in under Pat Connaughton. Look, I think Pat Connaughton's fine as a player. I'm not secure in 29 minutes. I'm not secure in 11 shots. I'm not secure in 9 3-pointers. He rebounds okay. That's about it. You're not getting rebounds. You're not getting frequently, steals, blocks, assists out of him. So he's fine. He is obviously extremely inexpensive. The DK prices on him and George Hill were both very attractive, but he is more than double owned George Hill. I would prefer George Hill at lesser ownership. Kyrie Irving, 42%. That's a good number. Again, I would have probably had less, but felt bad about it, so I'm absolutely fine with that. Giannis, 39%. Okay, it's a little bit less than I thought. I said both he and Harden I thought would be in the 40s. That's not a big number. Again, I'd want nominally more, but we're obviously tilting at windmills a little bit here. Al Horford, 37%. Still too little. Should be more. Should be 45, 50. He's safe with a pretty big upside. Chris Middleton, 30. Okay. Marcus Morris, 25. I'd want a little bit less. My first read at how Marcus Smart affects this rotation reduces him down to about 27 minutes. we will see how that goes. Tweet at me later today how stupid I was for suggesting that he would only see 27 minutes with the return of Marcus Smart. Eric Bledsoe, 23.4%. Yeah. I got nothing. George Hill, 21.7%. I'd want more than that, especially with Connaughton at 44. More than double Connaughton to Hill is inappropriate. I do like Connaughton a little bit more than Hill, but he will outscore him more than 1 out of 3 times, which would basically be what would be required to make that ownership justified. Gordon Hayward, 19. I like that a good bit. Jason Tatum, 15. I like that too. Jaylen Brown, 14.6. I really don't hate that. This is a good matchup for him. Said so from the beginning. This is a spot that works out better for him than the other wings on this team. Lots of examples of guys playing the 2 with his style of game, being able to actually perform against this Bucks team this year. So yes, I am worried about the minutes, and I do think of the guys we had been seeing getting time, he does take the largest chop here, unless you want to count Ojale, who I actually have losing a couple more minutes. But 15% is a small number on a 2-game slate. Ersan, 14.2. Yeah, I mean, he's 3K and productive in the limited time he gets, but much nicer for me is Brook Lopez at 12. Again, I have Brook Lopez scoring a little bit less than 20 fantasy points, but he got 29 minutes last game. That's kind of exciting. Like, how unlikely do you think it is he scores a fantasy point a minute? So if we're saying it's not impossible he plays 29 minutes, just did it, and it's not impossible he scores a fantasy point a minute, I'm pretty excited if I get 29 out of Brook Lopez tonight. He's not brilliant, but 12%, that's a small number. Marcus Smart, 4%. And DK, you're probably stretching there a little bit, but 4% is a good spot to have it at. Terry Rozier, 3%. Yeah, again, that's nominal, but the upside is potential. Sterling Brown, 0.7. Again, did not play in the last game, so obviously a little concern there. Aaron Baines, 0.34. Would not surprise me if he did not play today, to be honest. Semi Ojeleye, 0.3. Never the answer. Tony Snell, 0.09. RJ Hunter, 0.07. DJ Wilson, 0.04. Daniel Tice, 0.03. TJ... Anyone here actually play themselves? I don't think you could. Oh, sorry. Malcolm Brogdon, 0.01%. Congratulations. You played yourself. I will take a quick peek on FanDuel, simply because I'm curious about the Al Horford number, if nothing else. I'm going to say... I'm gonna directly challenge our projection here. Hold on. I'm going to refresh, and I'm going to look at our projection, and then I'm going to over-under it. Our FanDuel projection for center for Al Horford is 61%. We have Mirotic at 91. I'm going to take the over on Horford at 61 and the under on Mirotic at 91. Let's look. First, I got to figure out what the hell the big tournament is. Although it's usually sponsored by Hulu. Wait a minute, I don't see a little Hulu icon here anywhere. What's going on? 300. Maybe they're sponsored. What the hell? What's going on? It's got to be that 350, right? No, I don't want to play golf. Thank you. What's going on? I don't understand. I'll figure it out. 350K Monday. This has to be it. Okay. Something. Al Horford, 48.8%. Well, I got that wrong. I said over 61. Mirotic, 68%. I was like, yeah, there's no way Mirotic can be 91%. This is... Obviously, FanDuel is whatever, but more than 1 out of 10 lineups wasn't going to happen. So that was kind of an easy mode. But, yeah, Al Horford. With no fantasy points in the first 3 minutes. Al Horford bust in first. So there it is, my friends. There is today's show. I'll be back again tomorrow. And I think like the day after that and the day after that. Although, again, if you like your Fast Eddie, we are coming to the end. So send me a self-addressed to envelope, and I'll send you an autograph date by 10. That is all. Best of luck, my friends. Bonne chance.